Hey guys, I wanted to talk about this for a while. I've been seeing it all over the internet. It's just been a trending topic, as they might say. You know, I want to discuss the Switch 2 and the Galaxy and Galaxy 2 ports that have been circulating. And I know that I've talked about Switch 2 so many times on my channel that it's not even funny at this point, because I talked about Switch 2 a little bit too much, but I'm gonna do probably this last video anyway on the Switch 2 and we'll be done with it. And I'm also going to cover Galaxy 1 and Galaxy 2 because, well, they've been in the limelight, not in a good way lately. So, I've started to hear these videos, I've started to watch these videos, particularly from RGT85. Go check out his channel, and another YouTuber, which I'm gonna put in the description as well. I really cannot pronounce his name because, well, I barely can pronounce names already. But yeah, those two YouTubers have talked about quite a bit on Switch 2 and just Galaxy 1 and Galaxy 2, and I'm gonna start off with Switch 2 because I think this is kind of important, because I feel as though like people are not gonna get it. And I get that people have a choice when it comes to buying products. I get it. People have a choice when it comes to buying products. You can listen to my opinion, you cannot. Whatever the cookie crumbles, that's your choice. That really is. At the end of the day, that is yours. You know, take it or leave it. Why? Okay. So, when it comes to the Switch 2, I'll be completely honest with you. I get that, we have a choice in this. Like, I'm gonna reiterate again, we have a choice in getting the console if we want it or not. I get that. But Switch 2, in my opinion, is probably one of the worst upgrades that Nintendo has done. I'll be one to say I really don't like talking negative about this. I really don't. But it's just one thing that has gotten in my head for so long, and one of the things that irks me the most, I feel like it's not the price of the console itself. Well, it's not the price of the console itself. And while over $400 is a little bit much for a console, an upgraded console, by the way, when this console should have been like maybe $200 at best. I'm not gonna worry about that too much. What I'm worried about in aspect is just the software that is coming out for this thing. And it pains me that we never seen any other Switch 2 exclusives, because the only thing aside from Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza, which both of them are really great games, aside from those two games, we got a ton of Nintendo Switch 2 edition games. Mario Wonder, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, all these other great games. that were previously released on Switch 1. And while all those are good and dandy, you know, where are the other Switch 2 exclusive titles? Where are they? You know, I I I get that Metroid Prime 4 is gonna release sometime in December. I get that, but you know, it's also gonna be on the Nintendo Switch 1. It is. It is gonna be on the Nintendo Switch 1. And it worries me to a degree because it's like, did Nintendo not even try with this particular console? Because I'll be completely honest with you, I'm not gonna get a console that is going to play the previous. That's gonna play on the previous console. I'm not going to get that because that's a waste of money. And you know, I've already got the Switch 2, the Switch 1. I've already got the original Nintendo Switch. And most of the games that are on the Switch 2, I can already play on Switch 1. And while the upgrades are nice, the upgrades are something good. You know, the upgrades are minimal at best. You know, I'm not gonna fork out maybe $400 plus to get an upgrade of a system that should have been something from the get-go. I'm not doing that. I really am not. And say that I'm wrong all you want, but I'm just telling you Switch 2 is not even worth it at this point. And if there were more Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games, maybe I could see something. Maybe I could see maybe getting a Switch 2 in the future. Like at some point it's gonna be like Nintendo Switch 2 upgrade here, Nintendo Switch 2 upgrade over there. You know, it's crazy. And, you know, I don't believe it's worth it. You know, there's not enough Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games. And if there was Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games, you know, I would be inclined to buy it more. You know, I would. And probably many other people would not regret buying the Switch 2, which I've seen one video talking about that too, you know, from the person I'm going to mention in description, you know. People are regretting buying the Switch 2, which I can tell you, you know, you just heard my opinion right then and there. Like it's such a waste of money to buy the Switch 2 because you got mostly all the content from Switch 1, and you know, I get it. You get a better frame rate, you get better visuals on the Switch 2, but what else? What else is there? And you know, I get that there's upgrades for certain games, but that's not enough. That really is not enough. And if Nintendo was going to justify thinking that this console is what it is, because you know, I feel as though Nintendo is not putting up their best efforts when it comes to this particular console. I just don't see it. I really don't. And if people tell me otherwise, you know, that I'm wrong, you know, go ahead. Because, well, it's my opinion. And considering that, you know, I feel as though Switch 2 has really not made a mark. And it's going to end up the same way as it is going to be for the Wii U. It really is. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's really going to end up in the same boat as Wii U if things are not going to change at this point in time. You know, a few months can very much signify very major changes, and Nintendo has not stepped up to the plate. It has not, and unfortunately, that's what it is. Now, Galaxy and Galaxy 2, while I get that they're games that have been anticipated to come along, I feel as though they they did something right and they did something wrong. Now let me explain that. Now, what I mean by something wrong is that we've gotten Galaxy 1 at least once in the 3D All Stars pack with Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine. Which, don't get me wrong, all three of those games are amazing, and I get that. But, you know, is there any reason to get Galaxy when you have it on the 3D All Stars pack when, you already just released the same package with the same game but with Galaxy 2 in it? I get that, the $70 price is a little much, which I think it's a little much. Don't get me wrong, it really is. But, you can choose to buy whether you like it or not. Nobody's telling you not to buy it or telling you to buy it. You must have it. That's just how it is. Yet, these two games were the biggest games during the time that they released back in 2007 and 2010 respectively. And I'm so glad that Galaxy 2 at least has something of a re-release. But Galaxy 1, it's kind of an if for me because I've already played this game like a little bit, not too much, on the 3D All Stars collection. So I don't know how to feel about that. But, it's great that these two games are on a modern console. But for people who, played this game so many times on the Wii and are just satisfied with the Wii version, don't go out and spend your money on this because it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Because, the original games are good as they are on the Wii, and there's no reason to get them on the Switch 1 or Switch 2 when, they're already just gonna get you upgraded visuals. Well, the upgraded visuals and assist mode are nice. Don't spend your money on it. Please don't. Because it's not going to change anything, and it's gonna be the same game that you played maybe at least about a few times already, but just on a new console. That's just it.